Noel Richardson is going to present tonight about his trip through the Grand Canyon in 1980 with Grand Canyon Dories, and I am incredibly thankful for you doing this. I love your stories, and I'm stoked that we're going to get to hear. Thanks.
Okay, well, thanks for coming. I'm not a professional presenter, but I did take a trip down the Grand Canyon with the Dories, and we launched August 14th, 1980. Previous to going on that trip, it was the first really long trip I went on. I had gone on a few rivers, mostly on great big war surplus, 30-foot long, ultra cheap tubes that they used to use down there. And the trips I did were all 3 and 4 days. On Yampa, Lador, Cataract, stuff like that. And mostly those trips were designed just to be a 3-day party. The most important thing we were packing were the coolers and stuff. And after the end of the last trip I took of that kind, I stopped at a bookstore and I bought this book. And I don't know how many of you have seen it, but it's the story of a Grand Canyon trip in the Dories. It's got the photography in it is done by a fellow by the name of John Blaustein. He said that the compilation of this pictures is from something like 20 or 30 18-day trips that he took, and he's a professional photographer, so his pictures are probably a little bit better than mine, but mine are more original. The introduction is written by Martin Litton, who's the guy that founded Grand Canyon Dories. Martin was a self-trained amateur environmentalist who got very interested in the Grand Canyon. He's a fellow that has been given a lot of credit for some of the speeches he made and some of the influence he had in the successful effort to keep him from making 2 big dams in the Grand Canyon. So Martin has quite a history. He started running a little bit in the Grand Canyon in the 1950s and 60s. He and his wife were among the first 500 people to go down the Grand Canyon, and he decided he wanted to make it something of a lifetime thing. He was very enamored with the Kinsey River Dories. The other boats that they had at the time that these trips started were the great big warp surplus tubes that were incredibly cheap. They were big tubes that they used for making bridges and all that in some of the big wars. But Martin, he liked the Dories. He wanted to do it with the Dories. He thought they were beautiful, and ran the river beautifully, and they're a little bit harder to row. It takes a little bit more skill, but it makes for a nice trip. So with that said, what we did, and see, you can probably kill some lights in here. These slides will show up better. We launched on August 14th, 1980. Myself, my son Troy, my good friend Lynn Hunter, and his son Robbie. And with that, I'll start some of these slides, and that way I'll remember what I was going to try to say. That's how much gear it takes for 4 guys to go down the Grand Canyon. Or at least that's how much gear it took us to go down the Grand Canyon there. For you that are not as old as I am, that's a 1980 Volkswagen Rabbit, runs on diesel fuel. Very inexpensive vehicle. It was our commuter, and the 4 of us went down there in that. What's that? Yeah, that's right. It did, yeah. And that's the reason I had it. Okay. We got too much light up here in the front. Can you kill a couple, some more of those overhead lights? I guess the other thing I forgot to tell you about this hidden canyon is it has a journal that goes with it. It was written by Edward Abbey, so he doesn't need any introduction. It's a very entertaining book, and it's got some beautiful photography. It's got an incredibly good introduction by John Blousting and another by Martin Litton, and then Ed's journal is pretty spectacular. This is at the put-in at Grand Canyon. Those are the old Lee's Ferry buildings for when Lee's Ferry was the only operational crossing on the Grand Canyon from all the way to Navajo Bridge to wherever on the other end. It was the only crossing available in the canyon. This is the first day and the put-in at Lee's Ferry. It's kind of organized chaos. Everybody's anxious to get everything together and go on down the river. And that's what we're going to do. The Dories have a thing. They structure their trips. They assign you to a boat for 2 days, and then the third day when you go down to camp, there's a new sign. You're reassigned a new boat. They like to mix the passengers up, all that. The first day's boatman that we were assigned for, and that was the 4 of us, is L.A. Tibbetts here. L.A.'s probably 5'4", 130 pounds, and if you're a little bit macho like I probably was at the time, you go, dang, we got the only lady boatman. Well, I learned a lot. She's pretty incredible. She's the first lady to row passengers for Grand Canyon Dories in the boatman, and this was the first year she did those. But by the second day, when she took us through House Rock, you didn't have to worry anymore. She asked us how hard we wanted to hit it. We said, hit it in the middle, and she did just that. She's an awesome boatman. There's a good book about called Breaking Into the Current about some of the original lady boatmen in the Grand Canyon, and Ellie is one of the 11 that has her picture, has a chapter in there. So anyway, amazing lady. The first day we only floated down 8 miles to Badger Creek, Badger Rapid. We stopped there to scout it, partly just to kind of give the passengers a thrill, and partly to see if the camp was open down below it. It's not a rapid that you would normally need to scout, but we did. And there's one of the boats going through it. We got beautiful green water here. It only lasted a couple of days. Then we got a little bit of rain, and we had to water the proper color. It's very beautiful. Abby doesn't have anything complimentary to say about it. This is your first night's camp. You'll notice all the dories are up on the beach above it. There were a lot of tides back in the 1980s. It was a lot less structured than it is now. You were never quite sure how much water you were going to get, what time it was going to come. Now, with the communications that are available, you pretty constantly know what the water is and what's going to be. But we're down the river now at 8 miles, and we're camped in here. This is our part of our crew. The first night on the camp on the Grand Canyon is the boatman's favorite night. They've just come off the river and did about a 1-week turnaround with a whole lot of work, repairing the dories, putting them back together, doing all the packing that you have to do, and all those things. So once you get away from Lee's Ferry and all the chaos and get down to the camp, they tend to kick back. The Dories are the only outfit that I know of down on the Grand Canyon that actually runs cooks with every trip. The boatmen normally have to do the cooking on that. The lady in the red shorts is Lori. She was a boatman from up in Idaho, and she was cooking on the Grand Canyon to get experience, hoping eventually to do some rowing down there. That's Fleet over there in white hat is the guy that's rowing the big aluminum dory. He's a graduate of Stanford University who found out he'd rather run rivers than what was his degree in? Do you remember, Troy? Civil engineering. He was an engineering student anyway, real bright guy. The guy back behind the rock back there's Tom Rambo, was one of the guys that was with us. It was his first trip down the canyon for that year because he had been training to be a whitewater kayaker in the 1980 Olympics, but Jimmy Carter took care of that. And so he was back on the river. He didn't get to go. This is day 2 in the morning. That's 10 Mile Rock. It's 10 miles from Lee's Ferry. That's figures, I suppose. It's a fairly famous landmark down there, and like I said, we're still on green water. I like this picture particularly because it's like which direction you're going to go. As it turns out, you get down there, you turn left, you do Soap Creek Rapid. If you turn right, you hike up Soap Creek. We were okay. Yeah, this is at mile 17 roughly. It's called Brown's Riffle right now. F.M. Brown was the president of a railroad that was considering putting a rail system down through the canyon. Fortunately, they never did do it. He drowned in this riffle. They didn't take life jackets with them. I think that's a pretty bad idea. It was 1889. The guy that did this artwork was a fellow by the name of Peter Hansbrough, who drowned himself farther down, and there's a point called Hansbrough Point on down the river. But they weren't prepared for what they got into. Our second night's camp was at North Canyon, and I consider the first really good Grand Canyon hike. It's only about an hour round trip. This is the shutout pool, and there's a pretty big cliff behind it. You can't do it, but it's an absolutely gorgeous walk. And if you ever go down there, you would like to camp there. It's about 1 hour round trip. It's well worth the trip. I don't know where I'm at. Okay. This is Tickaboo. The Dories were, all of the Dories, by the way, have names that are named after different environmental beautiful places that have been ruined. Tickaboo is a canyon on Lake Powell. And on the rest of the Dories, I'll try to remember what they're named after as we go through. We ran the Roaring 20s this day, and on 24 and a half, Tom hit a rock. And that's the result. So what we did is they redistributed the passengers a little bit, lightened up his load so he could kind of keep the nose up, and we'll repair it in camp at night when we get there. That's Spacey's Paradise. Mile what? Anyway, that both of those waterfalls come out of there. It's a beautiful source of fresh water. It's a great place to stop. Take a little bath, wash your hair, stay out of the poison ivy. It's not good at all. I know a few people that tried it. It didn't work out. If you go down there now, like last year we were down here in the canyon, there's hardly as much water as you can get out of a faucet coming out of either one of those. This was high water time. There was a lot of water in the canyon. They were getting a lot of snow every winter, and we were running pretty high. There was a lot of water in there, but not anymore. Vasey's is not what it used to be at all. This is Redwall Cavern. You can see it from Vasey's, or you can see the two of them in the same place. They're pretty close. Powell thought that maybe you could put 5,000 people in there. A lot of people think it's more like 500. I know one thing. If I'm standing right about where the guy in the red hat is back down in there, I can't throw a frisbee high enough to hit the top of it, so it's a pretty big thing. Tried it a couple of times, it didn't work out. I've got a remote control for this damn thing. I don't know why I'm not using it. And that's just a picture from the inside of the cavern. Well, we're in camp now, and we've got Tickaboo out of the water, and get a hammer and nails and get together and repair that so we can run the rest of the trip. Just a second here. What the hell did I do with that? No, I got my remote control. There you go. And here you are, duct tape. That's the last step in the fix, which was basically straighten it out a little bit and duct tape. This is gonna show up again in the rest of the show. I made a part of it. That's the shutout at Saddle Canyon. Saddle is down about mile 47, I think, like that. We're down about the fourth day. It's a hike that's probably a total of maybe an hour and a half round trip. It's a beautiful, beautiful shutout. That's Lynn and Robbie back in there. The water temperatures are nice and warm. The river's is at like 49 degrees or 47 degrees. At the put in is extremely cold, but the side canyons, especially in the summertime, are extremely pleasant, and the water temperatures are really pretty nice, and you can swim in all of these places. That's one of my favorite pictures. I think it's a great spider. He's probably 3 or 4 inches in diameter. He's got a pretty aesthetic place to stay for the night, I guess. Can I get one of those drinks over there? I'm kind of dry. I don't care what it is, as long as it's liquid. She knows what kind of pop I drink. Excuse me. Those are the granaries at Nankoweap. Nankoweap's about mile 53, and I think this is our 4th night out. It's a pretty sturdy climb up to where these are. They're probably the biggest, best preserved granary ruin in the canyon. There were some people like Colin Fletcher did The Man That Walked Through Time and wrote a story of walking in the Grand Canyon from, I think he went in at Havasu and got out right about here, so he didn't really walk the entire length of the Grand Canyon. And he thought that they were Libyan type things and actually spent the night in one or two. He'd go to jail for that now, but they're there. We don't touch these. They have, in fact, done some restoration. What the hell did I do with my pointer? I can't find my phone and I can't find my pointer. Other than that, I'm doing just damn fine. I don't know what I do. What the hell? I actually went to the trouble of borrowing one of Troy's lasers, so here it is. Okay. These have since had quite a bit of restoration work. There's a complete granary back in here that's been rebuilt, and some of these doors have been fixed up and straightened up and stuff like that. They do a pretty nice job of preserving that stuff down in the park. And it's all very impressive. Damn thing. picture. I think you can find that in any good essay or picture essay of the Grand Canyon. It's looking downstream at right from Nankoweap. The left canyon in the sunlight there is the classic Grand Canyon group. This next picture is from Nankoweap Camp, looking directly across the river at the wall. And whoops, I've got to figure out how to do all these different things. Didn't need this microphone. This is the classic Grand Canyon group, and in the Marble Canyon, it's particularly beautiful. The top cliff is the Kaibab, Toroweap, and the Coconino sandstone, followed by the Hermit Shale, which is where the red color all comes from. That's this stuff right in here, and the Hermit Shale driven down is what makes all the red wall, the Supai, the Vishnu, or the what's the gray one just below the red wall, Jessica? Well, anyway. Well, I have a forgetful thing on those names like that in my old age. And then, it's the, yeah, okay, it'll come to me. And then the very bottom layer that is showing at this point in time is the Bright Angel Shale. When you get clear down to the bottom of the canyon, they all seem to run together, and you don't get this incredibly beautiful wall. There's one chapter in that book. There's a lady named Becca Larson who said that she thought that this was the most beautiful view in the whole wide world, and when she was having a bad day, this is the place she tried to go to. I can identify with that. I've spent I don't know how many hours in a chair about like the one I'm sitting in right now, down right about right there, looking at that wall, and I like to put on the music from the Grand Canyon Suite that I've got and play it on. It's a CD that was recorded in the canyon, and it has a lot of little canyon sounds in it and stuff. And I'd invite you to sit there and look at that. I don't know. It's pretty spectacular. It's an awesome, awesome place. Hell with that thing. I'm done with that now. Okay. If it picks up any sound, that's fine. Now this is my first vision of the beautiful travertine blue water at the Little Colorado. It got a little bit. It rained on us. It's a whole lot warmer than the river. It's pleasant to swim in, but it is an absolutely gorgeous turquoise color. Only this is what it looked like when we were there this first time. I've been back. Not everybody gets to see it when it's as muddy like that. So I feel somewhat privileged for that. The LC is about, the Little Colorado there is about mile 60. This is about mile 70. We're now breaking out into the wide open country out there, and it's pretty wide open. This is the largest Anasazi ruin site in the canyon. They estimate that the size of it, that it was probably room to be home in the winter for like 150 people. Nobody knows exactly how many were there, but estimating from counting all the numbers of ruins and everything, that's the guess on how many people might well have stayed there. There's a lot of this kind of thing here. That's a mano and a matata for grinding corn. That's the hand grinding tool, and the big spoon is there, and that's some of the pottery shards that are around there. You're allowed to pick those up and look at them and hopefully place them back right about where you found them and leave them in the bottom of the canyon. But it's a pretty spectacular place. And that's another just picture of the ruins. That's really all the remains. There are a few little cliff dwellings and things in the canyon, but most of the people that came down in the wintertime to live in the bottom of the canyon were living in places like this. There's a lot of ruins like it, but this is right on the river. And then they would go up on the north rim during the summertime. So I think that's Troy. I'm not sure who all. That's all the camping that's required to Grand Canyon in August. You just kind of lay down, you have a blanket you pull over about midnight or 1 in the morning, if you're a little bit cool.
Looks like I've had a full blanket on my head because you're taking a picture.
I don't know.
I'll keep going, I'm back to sleep.
It's probably early in the morning anyway. I think it's kind of a good shot. A lot of people ask me about this picture. I like it a lot. Those are the primary colors, and that's the reason I took the picture. I figured the canyon laid that out for me. I should take a picture of it. There's green, red, and blue. That's everything you need. That's all the colors in the world. So I think it's gorgeous. Some people think it's less than spectacular. When we left the site where the sites were, the Anasazi site, we ran the first of the inner gorge rapids, and those are the big rapids. And we ran Unkar, which is right there by that, and then we ran Neville's, Hance, Sauk, Dollinger, Grape, etc. If you read the Abbey book, or the Abbey log, they walked everybody around Hance. We didn't walk anybody, but we had more water. I'm pretty sure they must have had a low water trip. But we were fortunate that we got to run it. So, but the Dories do walk people around quite a few of the bigger rapids, and I'll get to some more of those a little later. This is Clear Creek. There's a very small pull-in camp that you can pull into, and then it's an up and over hike to get there. It's absolutely gorgeous. You can also hike there from Phantom Ranch. When we were over in we went, at that point in time, we went on, finished up the upper inner gorge and went by Phantom Ranch. The Dory people aren't very big on stopping there. Kenton absolutely wouldn't stop. We did not go down and check out all those people. He stopped a backpacker, gave him all the letters and postcards, said mail those, and we went right on by and went down and camped at Monument Creek, which is on Granite Rapid. While we were there, we went up and we hiked, Troy and I and Lynn and Robbie, up to the Tonto Trail, which is up a canyon from down there from the campsite and up and around. And that Tonto Trail is the main trail that goes up and down the length of the canyon. These are some salt deposits that we came to. This is not part of the sacred Hopi salt mines, which you're not allowed to touch.
That's what not to do, right there.
Well, now, we weren't at the sacred Hopi salt mines, so I don't know whether these are restricted or not.
I don't do that.
Don't pick you're not allowed to do that.
Damn, can't believe they stopped me.
They'll never identify you from that picture. I don't really see it.
I'm president now.
Yeah, there's no law enforcement people here, are there?
No, just common citizens, very interesting. Let her fly, Noel.
Nice.
Anyway, I don't know what little canyon that is, but it's kind of a nice one. I stuck that picture in there, and then I couldn't figure out where it was. Probably on that same hike. What do you think? I don't know.
Probably.
Yeah, anyway, we're back down to Monument Camp then. When we got back down there, I have a diary that I wrote. And I was really excited about getting up to the Tonto Trail, all this stuff I'd read about. And we got back, we were a little bit late. We were kind of late for dinner. And then I realized I'd missed the whole entire Dutch oven full of, the first Dutch oven full of enchiladas I started to bitch about it a little bit, and Fleet pointed out that I'd been back for a half hour and I'd never shut up, so I don't know how the hell I could have ate anyway. So, anyway, he made a point of letting me know that. I did get into the second batch enchilada. They were incredibly good cooks on those things, incredible.
Was it Lori that was cooking?
Huh?
Was it Lori that was cooking?
Orange chicken, was that it?
Lori.
I don't know.
Was it Lori that cooked?
I don't know. Lori was the cook. This is Lynn doing what I do. I have my whole entire diary here, the story of my trip. That's why I can remember some of this stuff. And he's documenting right there. Oh, and I forgot this. Anyway, those are the black bags. Those are Army surplus. You know, you buy an Army surplus draft, you get an Army surplus black bag. Robbie's not very big. That's the only way you can close one of those suckers up, is you gotta sit down on it and squash it down, and then it's really a nasty little buckle. You're probably gonna bleed a little bit, but believe me, they're indestructible. I've still got a bunch of them at home, and they're tough anyway. The black bags were the ones as now you get them in all different colors, and they're a whole lot easier to buckle. Robbie was a little guy.
Oh, yeah.
This is Granite Rapid, right at Monument Camp, and you can actually see it. You can look at it from the camp where we've been camped. I think probably this next slide or two are as good example as I can give you of the pictures I've taken of how well the dories go up and over, and all of the beautiful characteristics they have in the way they float the river, and the reason Martin loved them so much, and that they ended up creating the Grand Canyon Dories. But as you can see, they're going through there, and then you go up there. This is two pictures. That's Fleet in the aluminum boat, the Niagara, and he's going up, and he comes down. And you know, where a rubber boat might go through that a little bit more and a whole lot less fashion, these things it's an incredible ride, it really is. The Emerald Mile, and I don't know how many of you know about the Emerald Mile, but that's the boat that Kenton had taken down through the canyon in something like 48 hours, the all-time speed record. And he and two other boatmen, it was Kenton and another boatman, the guy that's rowing the hidden passage on this trip by the name of Steve Reynolds, called him Ren, and the third guy, I don't know who his name, Rudy somebody, were the three people that ran that trip the next year, or in 1983, on 100,000 CFS in this same dory again. This is me right there. That's Kenton. I can't remember the lady's name.
Shelley. Britt.
No, that's not her.
That's not the
No,
Britt.
that's not the one there. But
I
that,
don't know who
well,
that
I
is.
don't know. I couldn't. How can I
It
raise
is.
that? Anyway.
Not her.
They scouted Crystal for about an hour, and then they came back, and the passengers were all grouped up, and if you wanted to run the rapid, you were in the front group. If you didn't want any part of it, you stood back and didn't do it. This is the very first year they ever took passengers through Crystal at all. It had changed a little bit and cleaned up a little bit and got a little bit better. But they did not offer anybody a chance to ride until they'd finished their long scout. And anyway, we did. We ran it without any great incidents. There is a story, and as far as I know, it's absolute truth, about the early days when they first started running Crystal. And Crystal became a big rapid in the late 60s because of a big flood that pushed a lot of rocks out in there. That the dory people were running a training trip, and they got down there, and they looked at it, and everybody said, "I don't want to do it." And Martin said, "I'll do it." And he got in the boat, and he ran it, and he flipped. And he walked all the way back up, and he got in the second one, and he ran it, and he flipped. And if the story's true, he flipped 7 straight dories. And they went on down the river, but that gives you some vague idea how tough that old boy was. There is a pretty good picture in one of the documents, which I don't happen to have here, of Martin running lava falls when he was 90 years old. He ran the entire canyon when he was in his 80s. So.
Wow.
But this is the terrifying rapid on the river. It's even more frightening than lava falls and all the rest of them. Although it's not nearly as rough now as it is, and right now there's some at low water there's some pretty easy runs through there. But, and then that's just on down. You can see, whoops, get my thing. This big wave here and that big hole over there, and we're trying to get down the right side and survive, and didn't have any real problem. It was uneventful. Quite a few of the passengers did walk it, elected not to ride. Yeah, this is just the input into, I think that's Shinnemoo Creek down at mile 110, or 19.5, whatever it is in there, where you go back up in there, there's a little waterfall up in there, and the water's nice and warm, and you can get swimming and one thing and another, and they can get the boats out and going in there. I put that slide in there. The Dory people were big on don't stand in line. We don't like a lot of people standing in line and all of that. And if the table's up there, don't get in line, stand for food. Kind of wait till you get some room and get up there. We don't. The only time we stand in line is when we take all of the baggage off the boats, and we do this. So we did this every day, but that's why the slide is in there. That was part of the procedure, but that was the only line they cared to see, so they said. That's just a view from camp from up above. Just hiked up and above and down in there. That's a pretty nice camp. Okay, this is Elves Chasm at mile, 120 something, I think. We camped in some little camps called the Garnet camps up there, real close, so we could be the first ones there in the morning and get in there before the big boats come in. This pool is probably only a quarter of a mile from the river and not too much of a climb. And all the big boats come in, the big motor boats with 25 passengers on them, and come up and back and go there. This hole right back in here, you can go in there and crawl up, go up behind this rock and come out up in here, and then you jump. Or most everybody does. Some people go back down, but I jump and all of that. It didn't, actually, if you're me, you jump from right here. If you're Jessica, you go up here and you scream like a crazy person and leap like so. I've got a good picture of Mike, but it's a little obscene. He didn't want to get his swimsuit wet, so. But that's from a different trip. Anyway. But Elves Chasm now is a long series of pool, climb, etc. The big boats, the power boats, the motor boats, they come in, they come up to this pool, they spend quite a bit of time, and they go back down. The Dory people like to climb it, and that's what these next few slides are about. There's a big rock wall here, obviously, and you got a couple of choices. One is you can do what Gardner's doing here, and what I did, which is slide underneath there. It's not real comfortable. The other one are these boatmen down here who go on a ledge about, that wide, and hold on to that smooth rock and walk by it. I'm real proud to know them, and I don't want to do it. But this is on the transition between the first and the second pool. And we're going on up to the top, to the quiet pool on the top, which is kind of a Dory tradition. This is, I don't know which number of pool it is, but this is the climb up and out to the next one above that, and I don't know. There's probably about 4 or 5 pools total that you end up going through, up through there like that. It's a beautiful, beautiful climb. A lot of flowers, monkey flowers. It's a pretty climb. And this is a picture I took at the top pool. It's very quiet up there. It's a quiet pool. No talking allowed. You just kind of sit there and contemplate your navel or the wall or whatever you want to look at. This cliff tops out way up there somewhere like that, but I didn't get a really good picture of that. Anyway, we spent a good 3 or 4 hours in Hell's Chasm. It's a beautiful place. And from there, well, we moved on down and we camped at Pete's Creek, a place where you can no longer camp because it gets so much traffic. And we stayed there and we laid overnight. And on the day that we laid over there, we stayed there 2 nights, we went on up. This is Thunder River. And Thunder River comes out of these 2 holes in the hill up here, comes down this big waterfall, and goes down and flows down to Pete's Creek. So the river goes into the creek. Troy and I went up about an hour ahead about everybody else, and we were up here by ourselves at this point in time, and then later on a bunch of other people came in. A couple of the boatmen did go up. I wasn't down there around when they did, but they went up and tried to get into this hole, into some of these caves that the water comes out of, and I don't know whether they were successful or not, or if they got in or if they went very far. But there is another hike onto Pete's Creek where you can go all the way up, and there's a smaller, from a water volume point of view, place where the rest of Pete's Creek comes into the river, and there's a big cave that you can climb up there that I ended up hiking up to one time on a trip 10 years later. Just about a 5-hour round trip from the river to the Thunder here and back. It was about 11 hours getting all the way up to Pete's Cave. I went back from the cave a little ways and I climbed up here and I took this picture from Surprise Valley. I'm well above the level of the waterfall from there. And I was in about 110-degree heat looking down at this, and then you get down in there, the birds are flying, and it's beautiful. It's a great place to be on a hot day. And this is going back down to Pete's Creek on the hike, and we did a little bit of swimming on the way down through there. It was pretty darn cool. That was neat. I think that's Robbie and Lynn. From Pete's Creek, we went on down to Deer Creek Falls and Deer Creek Patio. This, I believe, is the narrowest point in the river, and the only reason I say I believe is there are 2 points that are so close to the same, I don't know which one's which. But one of them is the narrowest point in the river, and I think it's got to be this one. And there's Tickaboo, and there's the tape. So we're still alive and well in the boat. And now we're going down and stop at Deer Creek Falls and Deer Creek Patio. And there's the waterfall. It's a fair contest trying to walk back into that and get behind the fall. It's really pushy, and the wind coming out is pretty fierce. It's pretty cool. And from here you can go back and there's a climb on up. It's a pretty steep climb. There's the waterfall, so you got to get up to above that level to get to the Deer Creek Patio. I don't have any pictures of the climb up, but the next picture is what it looks like when you get on up there. And this is the patio area, is all this here, and then there's more of it back behind here. And a lot of boats will try to come in there. We got in there early in the morning and tried to get in and get out before the big boats got there. They'll send a lot of people up there, spend a lot of time. We spent most of the day up there. You're not allowed to go down into here. That's no longer legal. However, it was legal in 1980. And this is what we did. We put a fixed rope in, and it was really a pretty easy climb down in there. And we went in there to do it, but it was a real privilege to get to do that, and it wasn't illegal when we did it. Anyway, but we dropped back down in here, and then we went down until it got to be too steep and too dangerous, and you getting down close to the falls. But we went down there, I don't know, a couple 100 yards, 100 yards, I don't know how far it was. But it was pretty neat. I'm glad I got to do it, and you can't do it anymore. Or if you do it, you got to make sure nobody's watching, I suppose. I got a picture of this cactus with Troy standing behind it, and it's just about as tall as he is back there. That's as much cactus fruit as I've ever seen on a prickly pear cactus. That stuff's really good eating, you know. It tastes kind of like watermelon. I don't know. You got to watch out for the stickers. But I think it's really pretty. That's kind of like my spider and my red, blue, green slide, you know. Sometimes I do one just for me. This is the waterfall that is most of the water that goes into Deer Creek. And it comes out of the rock just the same as Thunder River or Vasey's Paradise. All of this north side of the canyon is a lot of perforated holes and stuff, and this is the water that comes out there. This is Shelley. She's a young 21-year-old girl from England that had come over, and she hiked the Grand Canyon, and then she was running the boats with it. And then she told the boat girls after that she was going to fly over it. And they said, "Oh, really?" She said, "Yeah, Martin Linton is going to fly me to in his little Piper Club." And Kenley, the boat lady that was running the baggage boat, said, "Ha, and she's going to find out why Dory girls are so tough." I don't know. I think Martin liked the girls. I'm not sure. I think I know what that is. Anyway, that's the waterfall. Anyway, I think you put it on automatic pilot, I'm not sure. Anyway, there we go. And then we camped across the river, right from there, and we had a rainstorm that night. And I had to go out and pick that boat up and move it back out to the water. It just washed it completely out from underneath it. So, anyway. And that's one of the waterfalls that was coming down the creek the next morning when we got up. We had one of our group, it was a guy that had some dry clothes, and he had got most of his stuff sleeping out all night in the rain, and he decided to go back at the foot of the cliffs down here and to get into a nice little cave he saw there and change into his dry clothes, and he did do that, and he would have been all right, but then a waterfall started up while he was in there, and he got wet coming out of the cave, so it didn't work out as well as he wanted it to. This is the day we're going to go to Havasu and hike Havasu on the Hualapai Reservation. And this camp is called Last Chance. You can see the entryway into the Havasu hike from this camp. So if you get here, again, the Dories are getting there and camping at this camp so you can be the first group into Havasu in the morning and have less of a crowd in there, because there's always 2 or 3 or 4 boats or trips, in the same general area. We kind of hung it on the edge of a cliff there, It was definitely last chance, but it was well worth doing. I saw my first ringtail there. I'd never seen a ringtail. I knew what they were, but I hadn't seen one, and I was laying there sleeping on my side, and I had an ammo can in front of me, probably about that far in front of my face, and I opened up my eyes, and there was a ringtail sitting on it. And I blinked, and then he was gone. But I swear it's true. Cute little guys. This is Havasu, and it's my second chance to see beautiful travertine blue water.
Yeah.
It rained again. These are limestone travertine dams where a root will be growing across the river, and then the travertine forms on them, and all of these beautiful little pools, and it's a gorgeous, gorgeous place. And a number of years later, they had a big flash flood in here, and it took out a lot of the dams and stuff, and it's all rebuilding now. so it doesn't look quite as much like this. I don't think it's quite as pretty. All of these little spots here, and you can't see it so much now when the water's not clear and everything. Just almost every one of these little pools looks like it was designed by a Japanese gardener. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it's not so pretty as much so with the red water, but it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. These plants appear to be some sort of a grapevine or what. I don't exactly know what they were, but that's the trail. And it's probably an 8 or 9 hour round trip hike, something like that, up to Supai Village, which is the main village for the Wallapai tribe. And two of the boatmen, Wren and Fleet, went up there on a bet and got a milkshake while we were doing all this. Lynn and I, we were just hiking on our own, and we ended up getting way ahead of everybody else. We hiked all the way to Mooney Falls. It's a king snake. It's a beautiful thing. He's probably, I don't know, 5 foot long, 4 or 5 foot long. We were sitting there looking him over when Fleet and Wren got back and caught up with us, and they said, "What are you doing way up here? Do you realize we got to run all the way to boats to make the rendezvous?" So we did. We made it, just barely. 4 o'clock we were there. But it was a beautiful, beautiful hike, very enjoyable, and a nice king snake. We went down from Havasu a few miles to National Canyon. We camped that night at National, and we're getting ready to run. This is Lava Day, and the question is, how much water are we going to have? We broke camp and we floated about an hour down the river to, or a little even less than that, to Fern Glen, and this is Fern Glen Camp. And it's a big, beautiful beach and everything. And these are the big tamarasks there. And the boatmen are noticeably nervous. They're waiting to see if they get enough water. Because if you get enough water, you can run left. And the way I put it in my notes was, you can run left, and that's bad, but not very bad. And then if you get a big change in the water level and it gets low enough, you can run right. And that's not as good as running left, but it's better than if it's in between and you got to run right. You can't go left, and they're pretty nervous. If you read the journal in the Hidden Canyon, they walked everybody around Crystal, they walked everybody around Lava, and they walked everybody around Hans. So in the 2 or 3 years between that and the time that that we took this trip, they developed a lot more knowledge about some of the rapids. And I got to ride every rapid on the river. There were a few people that walked around Crystal and some that walked around Lava, but nobody had to walk around Hans. Anyway, these people are just working off nervous energy, because this is Vulcan Zandal. It's an old volcanic core. It's about a mile above the rapid. You kind of come around the corner. It's a bit ominous. It's this big black rock. People go over there now. I've been known to put jelly beans on there, just to kind of encourage the river gods to give you a shot at a good run. Some people don't like to do that, but I do. There are people that have been known to throw money up on there. And there's a true story I know, because I know the people that told the story about a private trip, some friends of mine that were on. There's a fellow by the name of, I forgot his name. And they camped right near this angle here. And so they, because there's no current, they paddled the boats out to it. And one of the guys that was there was a climber, and he climbed to the top. Whoop. And he got clear up on top, and he collected up like $30 in money people had thrown up there. He brought it back down in the bag, and everybody looked at him like, he couldn't get anybody to take him to the rapid the next day. He went down there with a guy named Stephen Maurer, who I haven't met, but I've heard a lot of good stories about. He's a really good guy. He was running a 14-foot bucket boat, So he had to take his passenger because nobody else would take him. Took him through there, ripped the bottom of his boat up on a big rock. That's real good. They had a big slit. They had a big repair business. I don't know what else. I'm not sure it's true or not, but I think it is. They say that the guy came back the next year, went back, climbed the rock again, put the money back. We won't take any more chances. As far as I know, that's a true story. I was not there. This is Lava Falls. That's a lot of water. I don't know anybody else that's here what Jessica would say, but
That's big.
I'm sure it's probably at least 25 to 30,000.
Yeah, that's big. That's
The,
angry.
the only estimate I heard on water levels on the whole trip were when we were at House Rock, and Ellie Tibbetts said that she thought we had 27,000, and that's a lot of water down in there. So it's good. We're going to run right. You can see over here there's some stuff you'd rather not run if you can avoid it. So here we go. Now, didn't have a telephoto. I sent my camera down with the cook, and she didn't want to carry my big telephoto lens, so she shot it like this, but it really worked out pretty good. You can see how big the boat looks out there. And anyway, and this was another rapid where you volunteered to go, and most of the people rode on this one. There were a couple that walked around.
Hey Noel, how big are the dories?
How what?
How big are the dories? How long are they?
They're about 18 foot.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, you can see how big there it is. I can't see the duct tape in this one, but that's stickaboo running through there. And I think that's the people coming in up there, their heads are sticking up, but that's just the entry, you know. But that's, this is really a friendly level. I promise you it's fun. You love it. I don't know how many of you have been down there, but you want to go. Now we're below the rapid, and so they got this thing out. That's Troy and his name was Chris, I think. 16-year-old boy, and they got the first turn in the inflatable kayak, and they ran 2:05 in it. They ran part of 2:05, right?
204.
2:05.
205. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
205.
You ran part of it, right?
Endowed in that river.
Yeah.
That hat is at the bottom of the river.
It ate.
Endowed.
It ate their lunch. Yeah. Anyway, and we did end up swimming a couple of rapids. I think Troy and those guys swam 217
You were upside down.
later on. Anyway, now this is 205 rapids, so this is the rapid they went in that little boat part way in. And that's Ellie going through there. This is getting to be late in the trip, but that's Ren going through in Hidden Passage. And there's the duct tape. And there's Tom. So the fix worked. We're almost down there. This is Travertine Falls. It's about mile 222 or 3, something like that. It's down just not very far below the Diamond Crit Takeout. We were going to stop there for a while, and everywhere we stopped, Lynn and I would ask Kenton how long we were going to be there, and he'd say we're leaving here at 2:30. If that was an hour and a half away, we would take off and hike 45 minutes and turn around and come back. So we hiked everywhere we went. We did hike this one. We did get up and around that. And then when we came back down, I was taking a picture, and I didn't get the picture of Lynn. He completed that last part in about a second and a half, but he wasn't hurt. Anyway, we did see some donkeys on this particular hike. I didn't have a camera. I didn't get any pictures with them. This is 1980. In 1982, they took all the burros out of the Grand Canyon. They went up, rounded them all up, put them on boats or in helicopters, and got them out of there. I have a feeling a few of those mean old jacks probably ended up Well, I don't think they probably got out of the canyon, I don't know. So, anyway, at that point in time, we floated a little farther and ran the rest of those little rapids down through there, and then we're back onto Lake Mead. This is the 16-day trip that was behind us. And they had then run lava the same day we did, but they ran later in the day. And then they caught up with us on the lake, and they were going all the way to the takeout today, and they're tied onto a little outboard motor and pushing across. It's about 40 miles of flat water. We were on a smaller motor, so they caught us and passed us. We went on down and camped on Scorpion Island, and then took out the next day at Pierce Ferry. So, but that's the mode of travel for that last little bit. You tie all the boats into a cluster, put a little motor on them, and it's kind of party time all the way out.
Unless you get a rock. But if you get a rock.
This is Martin Litton. He's the one that came and picked us up and brought us out and delivered the motor. Kent and Drew, and that's Fleet back there in the back, and they're pointing something out, but I didn't want to not have a picture of Martin. Which I think brings me to the obligatory last river trip slide that everybody has to take. That's the Gruber with a river view. I did make notes in my diary about the first night in camp when we all gathered around the Gruber and 25 strangers and got instructions on how to go to the bathroom. You are obliged to have that particular slide. That's all the pictures I got. I'm perfectly willing to answer all the questions that anybody's got. I don't know. Appreciate everybody coming. I've got some different documents and stuff I read in here and stuff like that. I was going to read to you one passage here. Let's see. About dories. Somebody said, you know, that the obvious way to do that was to buy a bunch of huge, cheap war surplus tubes, put them all together. You can call tons and tons of crap. And they're indestructible and everything else, and that's the logical thing to do. And it just noted here, fortunately, logic is not everybody's strong suit. Martin Litton didn't think so. And a quote by Litton, he said, "There's a magic about the shape of the boat in terms of its stability and its ability to recover from extreme situations. The boat is something beautiful to look at. It has lines that belong on the water. There's a mystique thing about a dory. To those of us who know them, I feel that anyone who looks at a dory and then has to ask why you use that will never understand, no matter what kind of an answer you give." So that's what it is. And if anybody goes down there and wants to take a commercial trip, I would certainly recommend it. On the other hand, private trips are a lot of fun. Anyway, if anybody wants to look at any of these documents and things, they're up here.
And does anybody have any questions maybe for Noel? Are there any?
I do.
All right.
Hey, no, so I actually came in late. Was that your first trip down the canyon?
Yeah, it's the first time I went up the Grand Canyon. I didn't think I'd ever go again, quite frankly.
So I'm just curious, like, I mean, I know you ran it more, right? So
Yeah.
you now kind of know it, but yeah. Wait, so like, I'm just curious, what do you think are the biggest, what do you feel are the biggest differences?
What do I think now? Go ahead.
What are your biggest differences in the experience between 1980 and now?
The difference in the experience, I gotta go
Yeah,
on.
the difference
I gotta do
in
these, so I can't.
the difference in the experience.
Doing it on personally or going on a route?
Just doing it in 1980 versus doing it in 2020.
Well, there's an awful lot of differences in the way things are done. First of all, now, you've got tremendous communications. You got satellite telephones, you got the internet, you can go back and look at the water flows, the releases, you know what the water's gonna be, what time it's gonna get there. You know a lot of things you didn't know. There's a lot more rules. I think it's more fun back then, when you didn't know exactly what was gonna go on all the time and everything. But yeah, there's a lot of differences. I mean, rescue at that time, especially for private trips, was basically a signal mirror. If you got crashed on the shore and you were stuck there, you get in the mirror and you're waiting for an airplane and you're trying to get them. And now you've got a satellite telephone. What do you call that thing? Troy's got on these.
Drone?
Yeah, I don't know. He gets a message every day since. I don't do that personally, but it just seemed like you went down there so you can communicate with people that aren't there. But yeah, I think there are a lot of differences. And right now, there's not much water down there. I mean, Lake Powell it's a puddle. And Lake Mead, I mean, the generators are what? The water intakes of the generators like 200 feet out of water. And I don't know how much longer it's going to be. And they keep having to make releases. So you end up, you're floating on, the minimums are still around 10 grand and stuff like that, which is runnable, but it makes the rapids a lot rougher. Low water's not good in most rapids. So yeah, there's a lot of changes between now and then. And then the boats, nobody was the self-bailers down there in 1980. And the next second trip I took, I was in 1990, and I saw one commercial trip running self-bailing boats. We were still running almost all bucket boats. I was rowing a rubber boat at that point in time. I don't want to row a dory. I'm not good enough. I mean, those things it's more difficult, I think. Well, it's probably easier if you're really good at it, but I'd tear it up sure as hell. But yeah, I think there's a lot of differences. But probably the biggest one is the water levels. I mean, like I said, there's almost zero water coming out of Vasey's Paradise. All those waterfalls are a lot smaller, and I don't know if you've seen a picture of Lake Powell lately, but it's a mud hole, and Mead the same thing. So, I don't know how much longer they can keep doing it. I mean, those people in Phoenix keep watering the golf courses, so they're going to keep running water down there. But that's my best answer. Yeah, she's
There's people
Grass.
No.
Don't play grass. I have desert landscape.
I mean, it is. The differences are starting. The equipment is incredibly different. I mean, the boats are so safe now. So, I mean, you got. Well, I mean, there you go.
Yeah.
These things are self-bailing. They're dry. You don't have to bail. I mean, we were bailing all the way on those. That the Emerald Mile was the first self-bailing dory, and that's the one they made the speed trips in. And the way he had it self-bailing there is he had decks way up. And he was rowing actually with his feet straight out in front of him. I think it was pretty darn tough to do, actually. Now they build a self-bailing dory that's got a deep footwell in it, and the dory boatmen now, if you watch them on the river, row almost all the time standing up and pushing like this and going down front first. And then they sit down and get at it when they get in the whitewater, but when they're out there and they go like, you can't keep up with them. I mean, they can really smoke it down the canyon. They can go fast. What's up?
Tell how they kept the fresh vegetables.
Oh, the Niagara was an aluminum dory. They only had about 2 or 3 of them that they had built special, and they were a little bit bigger. And Fleet was running that boat, and he had a sprout farm down in there. And he had all the vegetables down there in the bottom, and we're talking August, and everything stayed totally fresh because you're, on aluminum surface and sitting on that water, which is running like 47 degrees. Right. Put in, and it only goes up about 1 degree a day as you're going down. So, actually, we were keeping track of that. Lynn and I were all the way to where was it? We threw the damn thermometer in the river, or it fell in the river or something. We kept track of the water temperature all the way down. The water temperature went up 2 degrees just from the little Colorado coming in when it was muddy like it was with all that water. But it started at Lee's Ferry at 47-degree water. So you don't stay in that very long. Anybody else? Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Noel.
Thanks, Noel.
Noel.
Thanks.